Finally, 3 more days and it's all mine, my wife whispered. She didn't know I was listening. The house was unusually quiet that night. I had just returned from work, exhausted after a long day, and instead of going straight to bed, I stopped in the hallway when I heard my wife's voice coming from the kitchen. She was whispering. At first, I couldn't make out the words, then I heard her clearly. Finally, 3 more days and it's all mine. I froze. My hand was still on the wall, and for several seconds I couldn't move. My wife Emily was standing near the kitchen window speaking softly to someone on the phone. I couldn't hear the other person's voice, but I could hear hers. "Don't worry," she whispered. "He doesn't suspect anything." My heart began pounding. He doesn't suspect anything. Who was she talking about, me? I quietly stepped backward before she could notice me. For the first time in 11 years of marriage, I felt like a stranger inside my own home. Emily and I had been married for 11 years. We had never been rich, but we had built a comfortable life together. I worked hard, saved money, and trusted my wife completely. At least I thought I did. That night I went upstairs and pretended to be asleep when Emily entered the bedroom. She looked at me for a moment. "You already sleeping?" she asked. "Yeah," I replied, keeping my eyes closed. She didn't say anything else. A few minutes later I heard her get into bed. But I didn't sleep. Her words kept repeating inside my head. 3 more days, it's all mine. What was going to happen in 3 days? The next morning, Emily behaved as if nothing had happened. She made coffee, prepared breakfast, and kissed me goodbye before I left for work. "Have a good day," she said with a smile. I smiled back. But inside, something had changed. I couldn't stop thinking about the conversation. At work, I barely concentrated. During lunch, I checked our bank account. Everything looked normal. Then I checked the property documents stored in my office. Our house was jointly owned. Our savings were in both our names. There was nothing obvious. Still, the sentence haunted me. 3 more days. I decided not to confront her. Not yet. If she was planning something, I needed to know what it was. That evening I came home earlier than usual. Emily was in the living room looking through a folder. The moment she saw me, she closed it. "What are you doing?" I asked casually. "Nothing," she replied. "What was in the folder?" "Some old papers," she smiled. But her smile felt different. That night I waited until she was asleep. Then I quietly went downstairs. I searched the drawers in the living room. Nothing. I checked the filing cabinet, bills, insurance papers, old receipts. Then I noticed something strange. A small envelope was hidden behind some documents. My name was written on it. I opened it. Inside was a copy of a legal document. My hands started shaking. It was a life insurance policy. I knew I had insurance through my company, but I had never seen this particular document. I read the beneficiary section. Emily was listed as the primary beneficiary. That alone wasn't unusual. She was my wife. But then I saw the date. The policy had been changed 3 months earlier, and the amount was far larger than I remembered. My stomach dropped. Why had she changed it without telling me? I put everything back exactly where I found it. The next day I called my insurance company from work. I asked them to confirm my policy details. After several minutes, the representative told me something that made my blood run cold. "Sir, your policy is active. There have been recent changes." "What kind of changes?" "Your beneficiary was updated." "When?" "3 months ago." "Who requested it?" There was a pause. "I'm sorry, sir. We can only provide that information through the proper verification process." I thanked him and ended the call. 3 months, exactly when Emily had started acting differently. For the first time, a terrifying thought entered my mind. Maybe she wasn't planning to leave me. Maybe she was planning something much worse. That afternoon, I called my best friend, Daniel. We had known each other since college. When I told him what I had discovered, he became unusually quiet. "Don't confront her," he said. "Why?" "Because you don't know what you're dealing with. I think she's hiding something." "I agree, but you need proof." Those words stayed with me. That evening, I came home and acted normally. Emily was unusually affectionate. She asked about my day. She prepared my favorite meal. She even sat beside me while we watched television. I almost forgot everything for a moment. Then my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. I answered. A man's voice said, "You need to be careful." "Who is this?" "Someone who knows what your wife is planning." My entire body went cold. "Who are you? You have 3 days." The call ended. The next morning, I followed Emily when she left the house. I felt guilty doing it. This was my wife, the woman I had loved for 11 years, but I needed the truth. She drove across town and stopped outside a small office building. A man was waiting for her. He was in his 40s, wearing a gray suit. Emily stepped out of the car. They spoke for several minutes. Then the man handed her a large envelope. She hugged him. I took several pictures from a distance. When she left, I waited before following. I searched the building's address online. It was a law office. That evening, I showed Daniel the pictures. He recognized the man. "That's Michael Carter." "Who is he?" "An attorney. He specializes in estate planning and property transfers." My heart sank. Property transfers, estate planning, the legal documents, the insurance policy, the mysterious conversations, the 3-day deadline, everything seemed connected. But I still didn't know the most important part. What exactly was Emily planning? The next day, I searched through my old financial records. That's when I found something I had completely forgotten. Several years earlier, my father had left me an inheritance. It wasn't enormous, but it included a piece of land outside the city. The land had been worth very little when I inherited it. But recently, a major development project had been announced nearby. The value had increased dramatically. I called the local property office. The clerk checked the records. "Sir, there has been an application regarding the property." "What kind of application?" "A transfer." "Who requested it?" There was a pause. "Your wife." I couldn't breathe. Emily had been trying to transfer my inherited property. But why? Then the clerk added something that changed everything. "There's another person listed on the application." "Who?" "Michael Carter." I hung up. I knew then that this was bigger than a secret conversation. My wife wasn't simply planning to leave me. Someone was helping her take everything I had built. But there was still one thing I didn't understand. Why 3 days? I decided to investigate Michael. I discovered that he had been involved in several property deals with a company called Westbridge Holdings, and the company's director was a man named Richard Hale. The name was familiar. Then I remembered something. Richard Hale had been my business partner years earlier. We had a falling out after I discovered financial irregularities in one of our projects. I had walked away. He had always blamed me for ruining his career. Could he be involved? I called Daniel again. He agreed to meet me immediately. When I showed him Richard's name, his expression changed. "You need to talk to a lawyer," he said. "I know. No, you need to do it tonight." I hired an attorney named Sarah Mitchell. I showed her every document I had collected. She studied everything carefully. Then she looked at me. "Your wife appears to be preparing a transfer of your property. Can she do it without me?" "Not legally." "Then why is she trying?" "That's what we need to find out." Sarah contacted the property office and placed a legal hold on the transfer while the documents were investigated. Then she reviewed my insurance policy. Her expression became serious. "There's something else." "What?" "The beneficiary change was submitted using an electronic authorization. Can it be forged?" "Yes." I felt sick. Someone had gone much further than I imagined. Sarah looked at me. "Do you have any enemies who would benefit if you were no longer around?" I thought about Richard. Then I thought about Emily. I didn't want to believe it. Not her. Not the woman who had held my hand when my father died. Not the woman who had promised to stand beside me through everything. That evening I returned home. Emily was waiting. She looked nervous. "Where were you?" "Work." She stared at me. For a moment I thought she knew. Then she smiled. "3 more days," she whispered. I looked directly at her. "3 more days until what?" Her face changed. Only for a second, but I saw it. Fear. Then she laughed. "Until our anniversary." I smiled. But inside I knew she was lying. Our anniversary was 3 days away. Was that really what she meant, or was she using it as an excuse? I decided to wait. The following day I discovered another clue. A hidden email account had been used to communicate with Richard. The messages were disturbing. Emily had written, "Once everything is transferred, he'll have nothing." Richard replied, "Make sure he doesn't interfere." Then another message appeared. "Don't worry, he trusts me." I stared at those words for a long time. He trusts me. Those 4 words hurt more than anything else. I wasn't angry anymore. I was heartbroken. On the final day, I prepared everything. Sarah had the legal documents. Daniel had copies of the messages. The insurance company had been notified, and the property transfer had been frozen, but I still didn't know how far Emily and Richard were willing to go. That night I pretended to leave the house. Instead, I parked around the corner. An hour later, Richard arrived. He entered through the back door. I called the police and remained outside. When the officers arrived, we entered together. Emily was standing in the living room. Richard was beside her. On the table were documents, my property documents, my insurance papers, and a bottle of pills. I looked at Emily. She began crying. "It's not what you think." I said nothing. Richard tried to leave. The officers stopped him. Sarah arrived minutes later. She examined the documents and immediately identified several forged signatures. The plan was finally exposed. Richard had convinced Emily that she could take control of my property and insurance if I were declared mentally incapable. They had planned to manipulate medical records and use forged documents. But there was one thing they hadn't expected. I had been listening, and I had kept evidence. Emily looked at me through tears. "I never wanted to hurt you," I finally spoke. "Then why did you do it?" She lowered her head. "Because I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Of losing everything." I shook my head. "You already had everything," she cried harder. "No," she whispered. "I had you. I just didn't realize that was enough." The police took Richard away for questioning. Emily remained behind. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then she said, "Tomorrow would have been our anniversary." "I know. I had planned a surprise." I looked at her. Was the surprise going to be stealing my life? She covered her face. I walked away. Weeks later, the legal case continued. The property was safe. The insurance policy was secured. Richard faced serious charges related to fraud and forgery. Emily cooperated with the investigation. Eventually, she admitted everything. Our marriage did not survive, not because of money, not because of the property. It ended because trust, once destroyed, cannot always be rebuilt. On the day I moved out, Emily stood at the doorway. "Do you hate me?" she asked. I looked at her for a long moment. "No," she seemed surprised. "I don't hate you," I said, "but I can't trust you anymore." She began crying. I picked up my bag. As I walked toward the car, I remembered that night in the kitchen. Finally, 3 more days and it's all mine. She had believed she was whispering quietly. She had believed I wasn't listening. But sometimes, the truth has a strange way of finding the person who needs to hear it. And sometimes, the greatest betrayal isn't losing your money, your house, or your possessions. It's discovering that the person you trusted most was willing to gamble your entire life for them. I drove away without looking back. 3 days had changed everything. Not because I lost everything, but because I finally learned what everything was truly worth. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more emotional and unforgettable family stories. Your support means everything to us. Read and remember, sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who teach us the hardest lessons. Subscribe now and stay with us for the next story. Red Bell.